This week, these jokers decided to go see the Batman. Because I am uncomfortable with them dropping vaccinations and mask mandates.
While he's sitting here with us.
Decided.
Notice you said jokers in Batman?
Yes, that was
yeah.
intentional. I decided to go see Masked Up Uncharted because I, number one, have a website called filmgamer.com. And number two, I'm a big fan of Uncharted, the video game series. And, number three, I absolutely love action-adventure movies. It's my favorite genre. So going into this, the reviews for it weren't good. It's about 40% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
The fan score is a lot higher. It's about 90%.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
So going into it, I had low expectations because, Mark Wahlberg as Sully doesn't match. Tom Holland is a bit young but can play the younger version of Drake. So it was like, oh, is this origin story thing, is this going to work? And you know what? It did. The moment that I knew that it was going to work, not just because I etched out early from here, came in and got a free ticket upgrade, which started me off on a good foot, was that I was looking for, is this going to be an adaptation where people are like Rob, just kind of looking around aimlessly? Maybe the camera's on there, maybe it's not. Because the director, Ruben Fleischer? Yeah. The director,
I don't know anything about this movie in any capacity.
So he directed Zombieland 10 or 12 years ago for Sony. Then he did 30 Minutes or Less. Then he did Venom. Then he did Zombieland 2. And then now he's back on Uncharted. He signed on just like a month or a few weeks before filming. So I was nervous. I thought, oh, it's going to be another crappy video game movie at worst. And
Monster Hunter?
Yeah, but which is just so awful. I hated that movie.
Garbage.
It was so bad. I remember my dad was sick when we were watching it. I'm like, if my dad fucking dies watching Monster Hunter, I'll have a new vendetta against the director Paul Anderson, who's directed a few of his own shitty video game adaptations.
His wife is super hot, though.
Yeah. Did you know?
Sorry, was this... You go.
No, ask what you're going to ask.
Was this more of that casual fan service, a little bit hardcore game service, but like, was it really into the lore of the game? Was it really?
No.
Okay, so it was a casual type.
Yes, you do not need to. You have never had to do less homework for a movie going into Uncharted. My mother could watch this movie, and she would be along for the ride.
That director.
Yeah, it's the right. Not even the director, but it's like Charles Roven, who produced the Dark Knight trilogy, is a producer on this movie. Along with Avi Arad, who did, Venom and the Spider-Man movies and stuff, and they know.
Did you see Far From Home, the new Spider-Man?
I saw Far From Home. I did not.
Remember the new one?
I did
No
not.
Way Home. No Way Home.
I did not see No Way Home.
There's a thing that says, none of this would be possible without the direction of Avi Arad, who first brought Spider-Man up. I was like, fuck you! But I've seen these guys' other fucking movies.
So this is the thing that I want to say is because, Peter Travers, Rolling Stone, who calls everything a slam bang thrill ride. Mm-hmm. I used to not like Peter Travers at all. And then I saw him interview the guests, and he knew a lot about the guests' work and stuff. And you could tell that he's not a harsh critic himself. He's not an art critic. He's just there to have fun the whole time. And Avi Arad, and to a certain degree, Charles Roven, because they are definitely the creative hand of this series, they seem to just I want to make a fun movie. And I don't care about, pissing off the fans with casting Mark Wahlberg or anything like that. Elena Fisher, who's an important character in the video games, is not in it, although it doesn't need her because it's like a serialized adventure. And, of course, Uncharted, better than anything, lends itself to action movie because he's basically Indiana Jones. There's even a reference that Tom Holland says, when did you decide to start becoming Indiana Jones, he says.
Indiana Jones meets a little bit of fantastical things.
Well, the fantastical elements, and this is what I wondered with the Tomb Raider adaptation, which I liked a bit less than this, is that's something I
haven't seen that.
That's a really...
Which one?
The Alicia Vikander one. It's fine.
I haven't seen that.
It's fine. This one is kind of... they're both exact to the tones of the games that they recreate. This movie does not take itself seriously at all. Nice. Which is, and it is nice, and it is refreshing. It reminds me of And I mean this a lot better because Fantastic Four, the original movies were by 20th Century Fox with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans, were terrible, but they were successful because they came out at the same time as Batman Begins, actually, but they were fun. Like, they're fun movies of, like, we're not trying too hard. We just want to show people a good time, summer popcorn movies. And that's what Avi Arad and Charles Roven delivered. The thing that made me relax was when the opening shot of the movie is actually a shot that somebody, like, conceived, that has, like, an idea behind it. It is a ring floating in free fall. It's the Francis Drake's ring that has inscribed on it Sic Parvis Magna, greatness from small beginnings, and it's the beginning building blocks of a franchise, and it's floating in free fall, and then it pans down and tracks down to see Nathan Drake, Tom Holland floating in free fall, and it begins in media res of him outside of the plane, knocked out, and then he wakes up and you realize he's on the edge of a cargo plane. It's just classic, great way to begin a movie, adventure serial kind of thing. And from the beginning, you're like, okay, I'm locked in. Like, I don't, sometimes when you go to the movies and you're like, okay, when is it going to get good? When am I going to forget that I'm, like, sitting in the theater right now? That happened right away for me.
And it's a good way to do, like, that trailer scene. Yeah. You always put that trailer scene, like, it's a throwaway at the beginning.
Yeah. Like Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark begins with him taking the idol.
Okay.
That's exactly how
I thought you were referring to the trailer of Uncharted.
No, I just think Marvel does this. They either make up something or they give you a quick one that happens at the beginning of the movie, and you have the rest of the movie that's not the trailer.
Mission Impossible with the cargo plane did the same thing. Yep. Although one thing that I will say is that, like, although it's playing from the playbook of all of these movies and there are several elements, it does not have the crappy, I'll call it the Rock effect, because The Rock has been in Jungle Cruise and Red Notice, which are two, your mileage may vary, but enjoyable movies that are crappy. Like, they're purposefully crappy. And they're very expensive and just like a waste of resources.
They're money.
Grubbing.
Yeah.
And you can tell it made me realize, this is what the theater is for. Like, even at its worst, and this movie is kind of on the lower end of quality of movies I would usually go to the theater for. I went because I'm a fan and wanted to give it a chance. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy I did. But I could tell from the opening shot, from the cinematographer Chung-Hoo Chung, who shot It and most recently Last Night in Soho. He's probably going to get nominated for an Oscar someday. But, like...
Hopefully not for fucking It.
Yeah. But I will say that, like, the craftsmanship, it also has Oscar-nominated editors on it, about 3 of them, that this was made, you could tell that this is not your standard run-of-the-mill video game adaptation like Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City was, where it's like pretty much like a terrible movie, but this one was like, forget that, let's just try and make a good movie. And so I'll say that I like really enjoyed it, and I was expecting it to be
casual good movie.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be like Prince of Persia or Tomb Raider, where it's like, yeah, it's good, but outside of everything, it's mediocre. This is a perfect 7 out of 10 movie. Probably the most interesting thing is that it has 2 separate histories. It has the video game history, but also the history of development. This was a movie that has languished in development hell for about 10 years.
Yes. And
there's a bit of that you can tell that's like smoothed over in this movie. A couple of things that surprised me, and I won't give away any twists in the story, but there's a young Tom Holland in this movie. Like, somebody plays young Nathan Drake, and it's not Tom Holland. That I was like surprised, like, wow, Tom Holland is at the age now of like the ripe old age of 25, where he needs somebody to play a younger version of him, even though he can pass for a teenager. And
is it Face whatever?
No, thankfully not.
Good.
And it's again those stick to it old-fashionedness of movie making, where it's like, we're gonna do things, make movies the way that they've always been made, and it's gonna work. And certain things that I like about it that I didn't think I'd like were Mark Wahlberg as Sully. I like Mark Wahlberg more than most, and he tells an interesting thing on the talk show circuit about him initially signing on 10 years ago as Nathan Drake, and a couple of revisions go by, like Dan Trachtenberg is on, and Travis Knight is on, and they all drop out. And then he finally gets a call, And he's like, we finally got the other guy. He's like, oh, great. Are you thinking we're going to get Jack Nicholson back maybe one more time, or Tommy Lee Jones, or Harrison Ford or something? And he's like, so who's the other guy? He's like, Tom Holland. He's like, what? Like, Tom Holland for like who? He's like, for Drake, you're going to play Sully. And he's like, oh, like, I get it. I'm the old guy now. And it was that kind of moment for him. And the funny thing is that even though he doesn't at all seem like every character here is about 10 years too young for the characters they're playing on screen. Right. But that works because it's like an origin story. The one thing that I enjoyed most is that the three central characters, the bad guy, the lead henchman bad guy, the woman, Tom Holland, and the girl who plays Chloe Frazer, who's the love interest I'll get to in a second, they're all 25, 26. They're all Generation Z. And I'm like, wow, we get to see three 25-year-olds rather than, 55-year-old Will Smith, 49-year-old Adam Sandler, and, 49-year-old Mark Wahlberg. This is a new, young, fresh, franchise that's not a superhero movie.
Boy, so is he, really doing well. Like
Tom Holland?
Yeah.
It's kind of, there's something about Tom Holland where, when we heard about Spider-Man and Sony breaking up, and Tom Holland somehow got his way into that, and to the point where Bob Iger even mentioned it, he called Bob Iger and was crying or something. There's a dimension to Tom Holland. He doesn't quite show it here, only in his acrobatics, but there's a dimension to Tom Holland that we haven't figured out yet, that I feel he's capable of going as an actor.
I think Tom Holland, even as a person, he's a very honest, forthright person, which is one thing in Hollywood that is not there.
And excited.
Yeah. I think that's...
But you think of people like, one of the best examples is Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt, everybody loved Chris Pratt, and now it's fuck, I hate Chris Pratt.
Too much.
I'm worried
and
that
Chris
we're going to get...
Pratt was up for playing Drake at one point.
And I'm worried that Tom Holland might get there. The reason I don't think he will is Tom Holland, there's a genuineness to him that as soon as Chris Pratt got Guardians of the Galaxy and that
Jurassic
terrible
World.
Passengers movie and Jurassic World, he started believing the hype about himself. I don't feel like Tom Holland's believing the hype about himself. He knows he's in these big tentpole movies, but he's not man, I'm so fucking great. He still believes he's just this regular actor doing his thing, la la la.
You know what I have to believe about it though? And I kind of don't want to. I actually think it's the Britishness here of him being outside of Hollywood and then coming in as Spider-Man. Because he came ahead
being a
when
dancer first, when he was Billy Elliot and everything, right? He was a dancer first.
And this is what I wanted to say about Uncharted is that he does not move like Drake in the video games at all. Who's rough and gruff.
He's not Billy Elliot.
He did play Billy Elliot on London and Broadway.
Yeah, Broadway.
Not U.S. Broadway, but London West End. And he moves so incredibly gracefully. Mm-hmm. It is ridiculous because in the video games, the animations of Drake are rough, and he's always pushing his body to the limits. He's not smooth. The grace. Tom Holland moves like a dancer, which is hilarious. There's a scene in it, and there's a clip of it online where he's a bartender, or he's not a bartender, he's pretending to be a bartender, and when they're on a clue searching, just kind of buying time. And he does this thing where he jumps up onto, the desk or the table. He jumps up onto the table and then through a small hole, like Jackie Chan style. In a second, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's he's pirouetting. That is so smooth. Whereas Drake would crash into everything.
That'd be an interesting movie. Him in a martial arts movie.
Yeah. But there's a good element in these movies of okay, we accept that they're not like these characters at all. Mark Wahlberg not being about Sully at all. What Sully brings to the table that Mark Wahlberg has is the banter, and Mark Wahlberg does the super fast motor mouth back and forth banter really well to the point where he can do it in his sleep. We've seen him play the sidekick to the other guys and The Rock and stuff like that in Pain and Gain, and he does witty, dim-witted banter better than anyone, and that element of Sully fits into Mark Wahlberg's where they actually have good chemistry, and that's the central relationship to Uncharted, where they actually have good chemistry with each other. Mark Wahlberg is kind of sleepy and tired, and this is kind of interesting because if you see Infinite, which is garbage, the worst movie of last year, Mark Wahlberg is asleep, and it's he's
some good stuff.
And he's too old to be leading his own franchise, and it's kind of part of him realizing that he's the old guy here. That there's a scene and it's definitely they got money for it. He gets his ass kicked in a Papa John's. And it's funny because they're in Spain or something, and there's a Papa John's there.
Nice.
Which is right in the middle of the
Papa Jonas.
which is right in the middle of the clue path. And I remember thinking, like, fuck, Mark Wahlberg is old because he's getting his ass kicked convincingly by a woman who's like 25 years old, but she's like ferocious. And the thing that bothers me about the movie is that like that part of Mark Wahlberg is good, but you have Mark Wahlberg, Antonio Banderas, who I haven't mentioned yet, is good in the movie actually, even though he's better than the movie affords him to be. But Antonio Banderas is like, you know, like a sex symbol. He's in his 60s now, but like he has sex appeal. Mark Wahlberg back in the day had sex appeal. The girl on who's the bad girl in this movie, who's like a 25-year-old, she looks actually gorgeous, actually. And I didn't think that she was gorgeous on like the 100 or You that she was in previously, but she works wonderfully here as like the bad guy, the right-hand man. Is that there's this weird thing where she, as soon as Tom Holland's Nathan Drake sees her, points out how attractive she is, and Mark Wahlberg's like, oh, avoid her. And you think that there's going to be like some good guy, bad guy, like sexual tension there. There isn't. It's instead had with Sully, where she has a relationship with Sully, which is kind of weird because she's 25 and he's 50, and they make some sexual references there, but it's like nothing comes of that. And then in the video games, which are more romantic actually than most video games even are, it was one of the few distinctive elements that the video games had. Nathan Drake and Chloe Fraser, who is in this, and the girl who plays her is good. They have a sexual relationship in the movie and a romantic relationship. And that's completely excised from here. There's this weird scene where they're in a hotel room together, and I think, oh, it's going to be romantic. There's been some drinking and stuff, and Mark Wahlberg, because he's old, is passed out on the couch or whatever, and then they're in a hotel room later on by themselves and kind of talking, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be it. This is going to be the moment. Nothing happens. Even though Mark Wahlberg earlier on mentions, like, oh, you want to hang out with your girlfriend or whatever, there are all these romantic things that are hinted at, and then there's no romance in the movie. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I feel in action adventure movies, there should be just a little bit of romance. Like National Treasure had it as like a throwaway with like Diane Kruger or something like that. Indiana Jones, it wasn't always the most important part, but it added just a tiny bit of dimension to the material. And this feels either through, what'd you say?
The Batman.
Yeah, exactly. Even the Batman. The Batman knows that this one doesn't. And I wonder, is that like just the product of several revisions, which would make sense? Or is it like them sanding it down so that they can release it in China? Or something like that. Because that really bothered me to see somebody who's like, they're all the same age as me, like in their mid-20s. And I'm like, oh, great, we all get to leave it. And nobody's having any sex, which is funny because people during coronavirus have complained about the same thing. And there's no, I don't know about you guys, but post-Frozen, there's been like no romantic leads. It's basically been something that's been cut out of every action movie.
I'd prefer them to cut out the throwaway romance rather than have it just there because they feel they have to.
I have to say I totally understand it from the Marvel movie perspective, and I understand it in superhero movies because it's not really ever part of... There's no superhero who that's part of their identity. But the Errol Flynn... swashbuckling, adventure movie they're romantic films at heart, so they need to have some romance with them. And
let's say The Flash.
So to me, it was weird that the characters in the video games are romantic and sexual, and these people playing those exact characters who even have the setup for it, and even the scene opportunity. They have a scene where Tom Holland has his shirt off. With his
now I'm going.
Yeah, and he looks beefy. Like I remember thinking to myself as a straight man, like Tom Holland looks hot. Like he actually looks good. Like he has a man's body. Like he looks like a boy in Spider-Man, and people have said he looks like a boy in Uncharted, but he actually looks like kind of manly here. Like he looks good.
So you're saying he's on that borderline of like now we can look at him as a man.
Yes, because he's like 25, 26 at this point. Yeah. Like when somebody's in your mid-20s and
masturbation material now for you.
Yeah, and they still look without being creepy.
Move over, Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah, and that's that's kind of the funny thing to me is that okay, they're all in their mid-20s.
Oh my God, he's Superman.
So we have to kind of accept that as part of if we want to have these old geezers move off the stage and stuff. And instead, it's like no. Like, there's not going to be any romance. He has his shirt off. She's sleeping in the bed. And then in the next scene, it cuts to the next scene, which is later in the night. She's still sleeping in the bed. He has his shirt back on again. So it's like, oh, that was definitely
implied.
cut. No, but it's not implied.
But
it's just
now
a
implied.
No, but it's not though. It's just a continuity error is how it comes off.
Really?
Yeah, they're not together at all. There's no resolution to that romantic arc. They have all these things like Mark Wahlberg is introduced, and I'm curious, like, how the fuck does that work with Joe Braddock as the bad girl's name? And she makes a reference when she's fighting Sully in the Papa John's. She has her legs wrapped around him, and she's like, "Oh, just like we used to do," or something like that. And I'm just kind of like, oh, that's kind of like odd because they still look like children compared to Mark Wahlberg and Antonio Banderas. But it's like, whatever, I'll go with it. But it's like they have lines like that, and they have references to, Mark Wahlberg says to Tom Holland, oh, you just want to hang out with your girlfriend, like when they split up or something. There's a scene where they're in a nightclub and they're like dancing together. So they have all these setups and then nothing. But I will say that it's like, I'll take it as a continuity error because it kind of pisses me off the most that it felt like it was like sanded down for more conservative countries and stuff.
So do you think they did film this stuff, but they cut it?
I think that they either cut it or somebody made a deliberate choice of like, they're still kids to us, so they can't be romantic. And it's kind of this thing of like, you don't want to see, and I get it, I don't want to see romance in superhero movies either. But in movies like this where people are technically playing human beings, like I know he's like an Indiana Jones type and stuff, but there should be romance allowed. I'm saying that I feel that they've lost that capability in films, that kind of danger and sexiness movies, to the point where it feels even weird to say out loud. Like, why is it me talking about sexiness about an adventure movie? I never thought I would. But they're playing adults. Everybody in there is good looking. It's in the writing where they reference how good looking everybody is. And the characters that they are playing in the video games are romantic and sexual. Yeah. And they have the opportunity where they're in a hotel room scene and stuff. I mentioned the bedroom thing. She's sleeping. The next scene is him waking up in the bed on the same side of the bed. That's perfectly made, by the way, while he's sleeping in it. He wakes up, she's gone, and she's left. So it's like a weird...
sleep on the floor.
Yeah, so it's like a weird 1950s, like, I Love Lucy thing. And it's like the DC Universe, Arrowverse did romance better than this, which is kind of ridiculous.
But didn't need it.
Yes, it did, because it excises everything that doesn't move the plot along. And part of the movie that it actually holds on to the theme of is relationships and trust. There's a scene where Sully actually, like, abandons Nathan Drake. And there's a nice payoff to that relationship that would so well be furthered by romantic entanglements and stuff. And the movie deliberately avoids that, and it hurts the movie for it. But I will say the central relationship of Sully and Nathan Drake works well. The action is good. That cargo scene is quite good. The finale ends with 2 flying pirate ships. Yes. And a sword fight even on a pirate ship. And it's kind of like madcap and genius. You ask any like Jeremy Johns or any of the other YouTube reviewers, and they'll be like, as soon as the movie decides that it's going for it, it goes for it and lets loose, and it's a lot of fun. And there's even a giddy moment when they play the Uncharted theme, because Ramin Djawadi does the score. Kind of a crappy score. But the moments when they play the Uncharted theme, which actually has a more distinct theme than most Disney movies, so like you're like, ooh, this is like, it works. So by following the safe action movie playbook, it works well. The lack of romance hurts it, but it gets the banter right. There's no cringe dialogue. There's good action scenes, and overall, I really enjoyed it. It was well shot. The performances are all around decent. I really liked the main bad girl, and I didn't like her in other stuff, but I liked her in this. I like the foundation that it laid. I'm excited to see more movies. I don't mind Mark Wahlberg as Sully. Okay. Yes, and as a fan, I'm a super.
Are you gonna see it when it comes out?
I'm gonna see it. Would you rather this or something that was more like I'll put it out there. It's different, and you haven't seen it, but you get the idea that the Batman is really like concise and really like specific and very like homeworky, very like true to its canon. Like,
So you're asking which movie I would rather see?
I no, I
Like-
want to. Do you think this kind of movie, which is more casual, I would say, not as casual as like Monster Hunter, but do you think that's detrimental to you getting a serious approach to that universe?
I don't think that these adventure films, like, and I imagine in my head, like, one of the screenplays that I've outlined is like a very similar Uncharted inspired adventure movie. There's like serious parts even in The Incredibles, which is the adventure movie, you know, when he's on the island and stuff like that. That moment where there's actual stakes of when Syndrome comes out and stuff like that. There are serious moments in an adventure movie, but the great thing about Nathan Drake and Indiana Jones as well is that there doesn't really need to be a serious element. That's something that really only that kind of emotional depth is something. Quiet, Siri. Is something that really only Tomb Raider is equipped to handle emotionally, and they do that in the movies. Uncharted is just never like that. When they do try it, and they do try it in the games, I find it very soap opera-ish and melodramatic and kind of like bogs down the plot. This is like a National Treasure and Indiana Jones type story, and I don't need to see a serious version of it. I would welcome it, but if it was, it wouldn't be like an Uncharted adventure thing.
Do you think this takes away from the upcoming Indiana Jones?
No. Number one, I don't like
You know
Jason.
what takes away from the upcoming Indiana Jones?
Indiana Jones.
The upcoming Indiana Jones.
I don't
You
think...
haven't seen it yet.
I've seen Kingdom of Crystal
Give it
Skull.
a chance.
That's
Well,
enough.
that was.
I like
yeah.
Kingdom of the Crystal
What?
Skull.
No. You know what? It's fine. It's just not a very good
We should
Indiana
do a
Jones movie.
rewatch.
It's just not a very
We'll
good
review.
Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, and the thing is, in the first 10 minutes of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, with him escaping the atom bomb, it tells you how ridiculous that is going to be.
Yep.
And it is that ridiculous.
It's too bad it didn't keep that fucking tone for the whole movie.
I
Because then
wish-
it starts to drag.
Yeah. I wish that
Bad
Spielberg
CG.
had been included on his story that George Lucas didn't write, even though I know that's exactly how they did. That George Lucas messed that up, and anybody would tell you that. But I'll tell you, for Uncharted, I like those movies better. The action-adventure movie, the perfect action-adventure movie to me, is still out there. And I feel can be like told better.
Still
And-
to come.
Yeah, and if I were to decide, and I kind of deliberately did, although the Batman wasn't out. If I went into the theater and they said, "Oh, did you guys want to watch Uncharted or the Batman?" I would still say Uncharted because I love and I
What?
yeah
I'm never going to watch
I'm-
Uncharted, so this is all up to you guys.
yeah, but yeah, I
No,
would
but he's choosing Uncharted over the Batman.
I
movie.
He
choose-
likes it more. What's wrong with that?
watch him complain. We choose Uncharted over the Batman.
No, we don't. He does.
Film Gamer does.
Nope.
But yeah, I would.
People are allowed to like what they like, Philip.
No, I agree, but
Phil, I don't disagree with you at all, and I can tell because I'm a professional and a very good critic, mind you, that I know that the
Oh
Batman.
my God, you boast too much about yourself.
The Batman is a better made movie than Uncharted. I'm not disagreeing with that because the Batman has a clear creative line through it. It's distinct in some ways.
I
that
get
it's
your
not.
point because I love the new guy. No one else does.
But I like
New guy.
escapism.
We'll get to that another time.
Rob Pattinson, you're talking about?
No, the new guy movie.
Oh, Free Guy, you mean?
The new guy.
What the
See,
fuck is the
exactly.
New
You like
Guy?
the movie The New Guy
I
from the
loved
mid
it.
2000s? What
Yeah.
does that have to do with
Oh well,
this?
We'll get to that. in
No,
the
get to
future.
it now.
It's a-
I want to find out why you're bringing up a 2002 movie from my childhood.
My point is like you guys were making mention that anyone can like whatever they like, and it's based off of their personal whatever, and
Good
that
soundtrack to The New Guy.
links to agreed. That links
I'm
to
just a kid.
that links to the new guy with me, where it's like that has an emotional effect on me. That has a. We'll get to that.
That movie did well on DVD though. Like it wasn't big, and it's
I
funny.
was the only sale. I bought it
rentals.
36,000 times.
DVD rentals. But I bet you there's like, and this will be the TikTok to all you new guy fans out there of that
Oh
movie.
my
Like, tell us
God.
about it.
Please comment if
Yeah.
you love the new guy.
It's and that's the thing is that like nobody
Gonna make you watch it now.
We're gonna have to like revisit the new
Can
guy.
I watch it
movie.
with the same interest I'll have during Uncharted? It'll be playing on
Did
the
you
screen.
see the movie The New Guy? How about you're because I
Not
remember
that I
watching
remember.
that
The
movie.
new guy needs to be like a
DJ
live,
Qualls, Eliza Dushku.
a live
That's
react.
why I wouldn't watch it then. Liza
Yeah.
Dushku. That chick was annoying.
Yeah, but
But I'd probably watch it like I'd watch Uncharted. Like, oh, there's a
Dollhouse.
scene- there's
so
a
you
scene.
don't
Look,
like.
there's the ground.
So Rob, do you not like an action
God.
adventure movie?
Oh, I love them. I have zero interest in Marky Mark, zero interest in Uncharted, zero interest in the video
He takes a
game.
back seat though
Don't
to
care.
that.
As soon as I hear the word Marky Mark, my interest disappears.
In this type of thing, Rob is the critic rating.
What do you mean the critic
You
rating?
would be the person that would watch this and
So-
go 40%.
Yeah, but that's fair.
Watch it,
It's fair.
I'd watch it and
It is
have
derivative.
no, like I've never played the game. I'm never going to play the game.
Yep.
You don't
give a
need to.
I don't care for this movie itself. I certainly don't like Marky Mark. So all he can do is win me over because he's already on the fucking downward slide anyway.
But he's not Adam Sandler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. But no, I have zero interest in it. You know, it's like
If
I was
somebody
to ask,
else-
if I was to ask you to sit and watch 2001, you'd be like, oh fuck,
I've seen
I'll
it.
watch it, but I don't want to.
Yeah, I've
It's
seen it
bo-
too.
I just zero
It is
interest. You know,
Um,
same. With,
really
that's what
interesting.
Uncharted is for me. Just boring as fuck.
If somebody else other than Marky Mark was
No, I
Sully,
still have no interest.
yeah.
So out of 10.
Before I get to that, I want to say one thing.
Okay, go for it.
I worry and wonder about Sony. Well, I don't really worry about
We
them
all
because
do.
they're $1 billion company, but they have a history, especially with Ghostbusters reboot, of like when they make movies, like a movie this poorly reviewed hasn't topped the box office since Venom: Let There Be Carnage, or the first Venom, going back to it as a franchise starter, and that's kind of something now that 20th Century Fox is gone. And you know, Universal and Paramount, they all release bad movies that do well, though they haven't like in a while, because it feels like less movies are made now. I don't know about you guys, which is why I cherish this more. Of like, I've been waiting forever to see somebody like my age of like, okay, when's the next generation gonna come along and do their own action movies? And that just hasn't happened.
starting.
Like all the stars are getting older. I mentioned like Will Smith, Tom Cruise is 60, so is Keanu Reeves. And it's like, when are we gonna get our turn? And it's kind of slightly dispiriting because they're Gen Z and I'm
Bruce
the tail
Willis.
end Gen Y.
Huh?
Yeah. Bruce Willis is
Bruce
66.
Willis.
I watched Blacklight this week and Liam Neeson is 70. Or 67 or 69 or something.
Bruce Willis has a movie coming out every week.
You know, he had 11 movies in the past 2 years.
Yeah,
That's
I did.
fucked
He
up.
got his own category at the
Razzies,
Razzies.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
But that's the thing that bothers me is that Uncharted, for its video game excellence, could be better than Indiana Jones. Like, it could be. But I don't think that Sony actually has any intention of, like, making a good movie. They want to make, like, a popcorn movie, and they seem to think that they're too different. Like, they could very easily, like, any talented director, like, I hate to use this because it's not a good example, but like a Rian Johnson type. Rian Johnson is not, like, suited to directing a Star Wars movie, but he is suited and schooled enough that he could kind of do his own thing with the material. This is like the accessibility of Uncharted is that anybody could make it. Like Alexander Gonzalez Inarritu could make it. He would kick ass at it. Alfonso Cuarón could make it. He could kick ass at it. Like, it's begging for like a Steven Spielberg or a Matt Reeves. I hope that they like find that, but I don't think that they actually have an interest in actually making a good movie. But Uncharted, all of the points are there. It's just kind of, it seems like this kind of genre of movie making has ceded to the Rock territory of like, you can only make these movies if they're dumb and have terrible CGI. And this movie is just like a half step above that says, no, like, they can have ideas in there. People can try. Not everything has to be half-hearted. And there is a part where Marky Mark is acting like just a bit above Marky Mark. Like, he's actually playing slightly Sully.
So-
He's not playing Marky Mark, which I like. And Tom Holland is starting to drift into his Tom Holland persona, but they caught him early enough that he's kind of playing a character Drake. I want to see them fashion that series into a series where people are like trying, and I know that it's possible because the source material is so good.
So you're saying
and that's
this
what I wanted.
movie bridges that gap.
Yes, it's like reminds you of like how good theater quality movies are more than streaming quality movies. because I watched this and I'm like, oh, this is definitely like I can see why this movie went to theaters because it has a lot of things that audience take for granted now, like decent action, movies that like try where somebody's like playing a character, not a version of themselves. Like it's not, you don't have Ryan Reynolds here or The Rock just playing themselves and then they're slammed into this franchise. Like everybody's like, somebody's playing Nathan Drake, somebody's playing Sully. These are actual characters. I just don't want it to be wasted. So yeah, I give it a definite recommendation if you like action adventure movies.
What is your scale on 10?
It's just an easy 7 out of 10 movie. Because I'm a fan of the games and the genre, and I've been waiting to see these characters on screen. I gave it like a 74 out of 100, or like a B minus. I'd say. So it's definitely like a good time. 7 out of 10. B minus movie. Go see it in the theater. You'll have a good time. And man, I kept thinking, because I was laughing even at the part. Like they actually put jokes in there. And I mean actual jokes, not like references. Like, I mentioned the Indiana Jones thing, but there's no like Ryan Reynolds and Red Notice whistling the Indiana Jones theme that passes for a joke because Ryan Reynolds is that good. There's actually like jokes. There's payoffs to the jokes. There's jokes about like Mark Wahlberg being old and not knowing like things that the rest of people are knowing that like pay off. There's like actual effort. You could tell that like, oh, people sat down at a table and think of how can we make this clever kind of thing. So it's a +1 for action movies with some thought behind them. It's not misguided into being something that it's not, but it's totally worth your time. 7 out of 10, B minus movie. Go see it in the theater. Absolutely.
When it comes to Uncharted, I am uninterested.
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, and you'll enjoy it. And
I'll let you know.
Yeah, it's better than Sonic. It's the best video game adaptation there is.
What are we called? WatchAComplain.com.
No,
Yeah,
Resident Evil, I loved.
Yeah, well, it's better than Resident Evil. Like, it's a much better movie in terms of craft than Resident Evil. And you can read my review. Sonic was absolutely garbage. I could not get through it. This is the best.
My son loves it though.
Yeah, this is the best video game adaptation there has been. It's the best video game adaptation there is. What do you mean false? So like, what's better than it?
Anything.
Okay, but for real. So there's that. You can read my review at filmgamer.com. I did review this one, and
go there.
Yeah, absolutely go there, enjoy yourself, and go support good action movies. Save the theater.
Comment and complain.